the next few videos, we're going to look at a contract testing framework for microservices and APIs called Pact. Hi, I'm Mark Bradley and welcome to Testing All the Things, a screencast in which we use live coding to demonstrate different types of testing tools and techniques. Pact allows you to write consumer-driven contract tests for HTTP and message-based communication. In this episode, we are going to use Pact to drive out the implementation of a HTTP consumer. We are going to create unit tests that will make use of Pact's mock server to ensure that our requests and responses are handled as we expect. Let's look at the code. In this video, we're going to use PHP, but before we start, I just want to look at the documentation provided on pact.io. If I flick over to Pact, as you can see, Pact supports many different languages, including Ruby, JVM languages, .NET, JavaScript, Go, Swift Objective-C, and PHP. This is one of the things I really like about Pact, is it's been implemented in many different languages, so that you can have a consumer in PHP, and then you can have your producer in Go or a different language. And the testing work between the two different parts of the application in different languages. Let's make a start by looking at the PHP unit XML setup. We have a single suite, which is our person consumer suite. The difference from other setups in previous examples is we've now got a listener. So the listener we're using is the Pact test listener, and it's set up to listen for tests being run in the person consumer suite here, but these need to match. And then below the listener setup, we also have some additional setup for Pact. So we have the setup for the mock server with a host and a port. We have the name of the consumer we're creating, so this is the person consumer, the version of the consumer and a tag, and then the provider we're expecting to use, an output directory, and the health check endpoint timeout. We also have a Pact broker URL. That is something we're going to cover in a later video. Those are the additions we've had to make to the PHP unit setup. Now let's start writing some tests. Before we start writing any tests, I just want to show you the tests running with this placeholder method, placeholder test, and see the difference that PHP unit XML does. So if we run it now, here we go. So we can see that as the test starts, the listener sees that the test is running in the suite we expect and starts the Pact mock server in the background, as we can see here. If we scroll along, we can see the setup here that we put into our PHP unit XML, including the fact we're going to use localhost and port 7201. There we go. So that shows us that our PHP unit setup is correct and the Pact server is started before our tests run. And now that we know that's happening, let's start writing a test. So we can get rid of this placeholder stuff, and we can say test get person by ID. Okay. So first thing we want to be able to do is we want to tell Pact what request we expect to come in. So we can create a request. What we do is the request is a new consumer request, and then we want to configure this object with the request we expect to come in for this test. So it's request. Let's set the method to start with. Set method, there we go, and we want it to be a get. And we can set the path we want it to call on. So we want person / and then let's be really good and have a variable, so $id. Set that up here. So $ID equals so ABC. Oh, dash here, sorry. 1, 2, 3, DEF 4, 5, 6. There we go. Okay. So we set the path we want, and we can add any headers that we expect to be given. So let's add a header, and let's say we accept, and what do we accept? Application JSON. So application / JSON. There we go. Okay. Ooh, we'll get there on spelling in the end. JSON. There we go. Okay. So that's our request fully set up now. We expect to get to the path person / ABC 123 DEF 456, and we expect the header of accept, and we accept application JSON. So that's our request. So now we can set up the response that we expect the Pact mock server to respond with when it gets this request. So response equals new, and it's a provider response, and the response has set up. So we can say, let's start with the status. So let's say when we make this request, it's 200, okay. And we can say that it has the header, content type is application JSON, as we said we accept. So let's say that application / JSON, and then we have the body. So we can set the body. There we go. So as we can see here in the implementation, the body takes on something that it implements iterable. So we can just use a normal array in PHP, which makes it nice and easy. So let's do that. So let's be really good and have some variables again. So $first name equals Dade, last name equals Murphy, and alias equals 0, 0. Cool. There we go. Lovely. So now what we can do is we can say first underscore name is $first name, and last name will be $last name, and alias $alias. There we go. Okay. So that's our request and our response set up, ready for Pact to make use of when we run our test. The next thing we need to do is we need to get the configuration settings for our mock server. We can do those really easily. So we can go config equals, and it's new mock server environment config. There we go. Okay, so that now gives us access to the configuration settings of our mock server. Things like the host name and the port and things like that. We now need to put this configuration into an interaction builder. So we'll create a new builder. Equals new interaction builder. Okay. Builder. So got a bit of a setup now, so we can do given first of all. And this allows us to provide a time for the provider implementation to do some kind of configuration, some kind of setup before it runs its test. So we can say given user, let's say keep the language the same, sorry, person, Dade, Murphy, 0, cool, exists. Okay, so set up nicely. So we've got the given, and then we can say upon receiving
get for get person for ID, and we can find the ID. Let's do that .id, and then we can give. So now we go with the request that we expect to be given. So $request, and then we can say, okay, when this request is given, we'll respond with the response we've set up. Okay, so that's all of the configuration for Pact set up. We've got a request set up, we've got a response set up. They're all tied together and they're pushed up to the mock server in this during this builder setup here. So that's brilliant. Now what we need to do is we need to actually start looking at our implementation. So this is kind of the setup of our test double, which is in this case a Pact mock server. And now we can start making use of our test double in our implementation. Oh, I've just realized I forgot to pass a config into this. There we go, that'll make it work. Okay, so now our implementation is going to use Guzzle as its HTTP client. So we're going to start by creating a new instance of a client. So client equals new client HTTP Guzzle. And we want to add a small amount of configuration. We want to have base URI, and we want that to come from the config, and it will be get base URI. There we go. Simple as that. Okay, so there's our HTTP client, and we can now pass that into our person consumer. So we're now really into the bit we actually want to test. So let's just call it consumer equals new person consumer. Simple, and that's going to take a client. Okay. And now for the actual test. So $person equals $consumer get by ID. Let's call get person, shall we? Get person by ID. We're going to pass in the ID that we set up at the top. There we go. Okay, so we've now got our person back, so we can now start doing some assertions. So $this this assert equals, and there's going to be 3 of them, so duplicate those down. So the first one is we expect first name to be $person get first name, and you can probably see where this is going. Last name name, and final one alias. Nice and easy. Simple. Okay, so that's our normal kind of act and assert setup of our test. There's one additional thing we can do now making use of Pact. The Pact builder allows us to assert that the everything's fine. We can do this by doing $this assert true, and it's $builder verify. Okay, so that just allows us to check everything's happened as we expect. Our test is all now set up, so let's run it and see what happens. Okay, so the Pact server comes up. Tests take a little while to run. There we go. We're getting this missing request back, get, and getting the details, and it's truncated. It's a little bit, it's cut off. It doesn't give us all the information that should come back. Now, this is a small bug I found, and I do need to open a pull request for this, but you can quickly fix it it was the, let me remember right, HTTP, here we go, the mock server HTTP service has a call here to client get, and because it's not, it's another Guzzle client, it's not catching the exception if it gets a 500. So if you try and put a catch around this, oh no, close off the try first and put the catch in, which is server exception Guzzle $e. What you can then do is you can do var dump just to get the, and $e get response get what's the next thing, body, and then get content to get string, and then if you just return, lost it, where is it, here we go, and then just to ensure we implement, we need to return a boolean, so this will be false because it breaks, so return false. There we go. Okay, so now if we run that again, there we go. We get, there we go. So we get the full details here. So actual interactions do not match expected interactions for mock server, missing requests, get person, blah, 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 see standard out error for details. So we're now kind of got to a point where the kind of the error message is a bit better. It's a small bug in Pact, and I have been meaning to write a fix for it and just haven't got round to it because that's kind of almost a fix, but I need to get the tests done. Anyway, back to what we are doing. So I will move that out of the way and back to this. So we're not making the request to get a person with the ID. We know that because at the moment our consumer is completely blank. So let's make a start on the implementation. So first things first, we need a constructor. So we'll do a new constructor. Get rid of the documentation. So it's the client, Guzzle, client, and then we can initialize properties. Yeah, need to stop it doing all the commenting. There we go. So we've got our constructor set up, which is everything that happens there, and then we can actually get into implementing the method. So add the method, public text string. Okay, so our error is that it needs to make a call. So let's do this. So $client, this client, sorry. And we want to make a get call. So get. And we know the URI is person / and then the ID. So let's do that. .id. Okay. There we are. So if we run that, let's see what happens. Okay. So now it's changed a little bit. We are missing the get request, the get person 123, but we are getting an unexpected call to person 123. Okay, so let's go and look at our setup. So we are making the right request, it seems, but it's just getting unexpected. So we've forgotten to add the header to our get request. So let's add that and see if that fixes it. So this is an array. I believe the setup is headers, and then there's another array, and you can do accept is, and let's copy and paste so I don't get this wrong because I know how bad my typing will be. There we go. Okay, let's run the test again and see if that fixes that problem. failing. Oh, no interactions found. 500 error response. Okay. There we go. Okay. So the bug was in my test setup, I should have had a slash at the start. That was a bit bad of me. Okay, so I forgot about that. Let's go and look at it now. So what we've now got is we've got get call to person / ID, and we're sending the headers. Excellent. So now what we can do is the error we were getting back was now saying that call to get member function get first name on null. Well, this function here on the right needs to return a person, so let's be specific about that. And let's solve the problem there. So return new person. Okay, save. And we run. Have a look at our error. Let's make it a bit bigger, make it a bit easier. Too few arguments to the constructor. It takes string, so there we go. Run that again. Okay, cool. So we're now down to tiny little implementation details. Let's make the implementation work, and we'll make it work for all of it. It's quite simple. So the get call returns a response, so we can need the response. So $response equals this. Okay, and $body equals what we got. $response get body get contents. That returns a string, so we can now just do JSON decode and just get it as an array to make it a bit easier. There we go. Okay, with our setup here, it should be quite simple. It should just be $body first underscore name. Let's just take that through all of the others. Let's just make that a bit neater as well while we're here quickly, so it looks nice and readable. So it is first name, last name, and alias. There we go. Okay, so let's run that now, and we should see a passing test, hopefully. Let's drag that up. Oh no, we've got an error. Missing request. How do I balls it up with adding this? That definitely play. Missing request / person. What? Definitely doing that. What did I change? / person / ID.
Cool. So it's kind of sometimes Pact catches and handles errors. Let's see if we can see that. There we go. Yeah. Parse error. Yeah. So I was just not reading high enough. That was my fault again. So let's run the test and hopefully we should be there. Cool. And we are. So everything's running lovely. So we have let's have a look at it. So we have a nice full implementation here. Shut that up. On the right hand side, it's nice and simple at the moment. Just makes a get call to person/ID, sends an accept header, and then JSON decodes the body that comes back and throws it straight into a person object. And our test is nice and simple, nice and easy to understand. And the great thing is we've kind of tested this really nicely, kind of almost like an integration test. This actually makes use of the client. It sends an actual request so that we know that this code will work when it makes a request and it's given just a client with a different URI, host name. So that's really good. It also means that if we started to add some tests on our left hand side that started returning 400s and 500s from our service, and the fake Pact service was returning these 400s and 500s for us, the client we're using would act in the way it would if we were talking to the real server. Again, it gives us that realism. It means we don't have to start actually mocking out and using test doubles around the client. It's quite easy when you're using kind of a vendor library like Guzzle or Doctrine or something to start mocking out what you think the client does and kind of missing some of that interaction. So, some HTTP clients, when they get an error response back, they still return the normal response, and you can handle it, and you're expected to handle it in your own code. Whereas actually, with Guzzle, it throws different exceptions. So it returns a server exception, as we saw when I was making a few little changes to the mock server HTTP service. And if it gets a 400 back, it returns, I think it's a client exception. And you're expected to deal with the exceptions rather than dig into the response and check the HTTP status code and things like that. So it allows you to kind of test that you're using your dependencies correctly. It's really nice. I like that. Okay. So we're not going to write any more tests for our consumer. We're just going to do today. We're just doing a very basic get call, just to show how you can use Pact. Now, obviously, this is the consumer of an API. What we want to know is what do we do with producer. So whilst our tests were running, when our test passed, it produced what's called a Pact file. So let's go and have a look at that. So if we dump that, and it should be an example output. Here we go. So person consumer, person provider JSON. So if we open this up, okay, here we go. So we've got our consumer name and our provider name, and we've got detailed details of the interaction that our test has. You can see here, so it's got the description we saw in the given, and it's got what should happen. It's the opposite way around. Actually, it's got description and the provider state, which is what our given was, and then it's got the request that it expects and the response it expects. Okay, and what happens is for every test you have that goes out to the Pact server and back, you get a new interaction. Okay, now what we're going to do in the next video is we're going to take this Pact file here, and we're going to use it to implement the consumer, and we can run Pact in a slightly different way against our consumer. So that's all the code we're going to write today. And in the next video, we're going to look at writing a very simple Pact consumer test in PHP again.
Thank you for watching this episode of Testing All the Things. I hope you found it useful. If you enjoyed it, please rate the video and subscribe to the channel. If you did not, please leave constructive feedback in the comments. If you would like to suggest something you would like covered in a future episode, please leave a comment as well. I'm Mark Bradley. You can follow me on Twitter at @Braddle,
Or if you're just interested in all things testing, then follow @testing all the.